Hi everybody, this is a Google Hangout on Air. We're being recorded, and this is a session on using Blackboard tests and quizzes assessment feature. And I have with me Tina Johnson, who is our LMS coordinator and can assist with all kinds of Blackboard stuff, including what we're going to talk about today. So she's going to hang out with me here for a little bit and make sure that I'm giving you correct information. So welcome to this session. I'm Heidi Olson. I'm the Learning Design Coordinator, and we're going to talk about test survey and pool feature inside Blackboard. So I'm looking at some resources on our iTeachU page. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing that screen with you so you can see and follow along with what I'm doing. So give me a second here to get that going. And here we are on the iTeachU page. I'll just make that a little bigger so you can see it a little better. On iTeachU, if you go to workshops and events and go to the links and resources, that is where you will see this page that I set up about using Blackboard testing functions. So in this session, we're going to talk about some features of Blackboard, of the Blackboard testing. We're going to be creating a test. We're going to look at using a test generator for easier uploading. We're going to take a look at creating question pools, implementing the tests, and how it ties into the Grade Center. And then if we have time, we're going to also look at using the mobile testing feature, which is different from actually creating a test. They're sort of separate in how you do that. So before we get started with the actual hands-on on the creating a test, let's just kind of think of why you might use a Blackboard test. And in this recording, I'm going to use test, quiz, exam sort of interchangeably. So so when you hear one, just I'm grouping them all together, just because they're created the same way, but of course you'd use them for different purposes. But why, besides the obvious, might you use a Blackboard test? So certainly, you know, for creating exams, midterm exams, final exams, any sort of assessment where you want to evaluate a student through a variety of question types, you would use a test feature. Self-assessment, quick check-ins. So exams and quizzes don't necessarily have to be something graded, but it's a way of communicating and getting students to interact with you and with the content. Reading responses or reading check-ins for different readings that you have. You might think about vocabulary, quick facts, and sort of basic information that you want students to understand and know. And then you could also use the testing feature for things like reflections, both personal reflections on a student's learning or how a student thinks they're learning, or on actual metadata, you know, reflections about what you're doing in the class. As I mentioned, there's lots of different features that are available under the testing options. So there's a variety of question types, multiple choice, true and false, essay, there's matching, and there's about 10 or 12 more. Some of those are available for auto grading, and some of them require that you go in and assign points. So those are two different types of testings you could do. You can give immediate feedback to students to help keep them and get them on the right track. You can pull random questions. So a great way to create sort of self-assessment and self-understanding for students is to create pools of questions where you could pull randomly from a set. You can set up things, tests for multiple attempts. There's a different scoring mechanisms. You could create and use quizzes for on adaptive release, so that a student has to achieve a certain score or assignment level or understanding before they move on. Of course, tests are tied into the grade center, and they could actually be worth points, or they could just live there as a student resource for additional help. Expectations, you know, there's just a variety of options, and we're going to try to get through those today. So that's sort of the basics of Blackboard testing. And let's go ahead and get started with creating a quiz. So I'm going to go over to a Blackboard course, and this is just a sandbox course I have set up. It's going to look totally different from something that you might have, but the mechanics of creating a quiz is going to be the same. So I am going to go down into my course management area under the control panel into course tools, and yours is probably going to be closed. I'm going to open that, and I'm going to go into tests, surveys, and pools. So, and I'm going to go ahead and increase that size, make that easier. So we have test pools and surveys, and this is your area where you're going to start your creation. I'm going to go into tests, and I'm going to build a test. I'm going to call this quiz 1 sample, and I am going to give this a description. This is a sample. And I'm going to give it some instructions. Remember that your students may or may not understand the restrictions that they have, that you have placed on them for the quiz, so it's good to give very thorough instructions. And I'm going to click on Submit. So as I mentioned before, there's many different kinds of questions you can add. There's a whole list right here, and I'm not going to go through them all. And as I also mentioned, some of them can be auto-graded, and some of them will require your input in the grading aspect. I'm going to go ahead and just create a true and false question. That's a pretty easy one to start out with. And I'm just going to add a question here. And this actually, the answer is going to be false. I can give correct feedback. Yes, that's correct. And more importantly, I can give feedback for if the answer is incorrect. So here is where I can direct the student to look back at the material. And instructor notes would be only things that I could see about the question. So if there's something in particular I wanted to remember, then I could add some notes there. So I could submit, and if I know I want to create another true and false question, I can click the submit and create another one, and it will set that up for me. I'm going to click submit because I want to now create a multiple choice question. So when I click submit, then I get to see that my question was created. I can see the question, I can see the answers and my feedback. And I can also see that it has automatically been assigned 10 points. So if I wanted to change that, I could just do that right there, and I can assign it as extra credit, and I can click submit. Up at the top, I see that I have one question worth 5 points. And as I add questions, that will accumulate the total number of questions and the total number of points, so I can kind of keep track of it. I'm going to create a multiple choice question now. And here's my question. As with other Blackboard content areas, I have all of these formatting opportunities. So if I need to add extra formatting, if I need to add a video to my question, image, an attachment, if I want them to read something before they actually answer the question, I have all those capabilities right there when I'm creating my questions. For multiple choice and multiple answer questions, you can allow for partial credit. And you can also have the answers show up in random order, so they're not always in the same A, B, C, D order. Depending on how many students click on them, they will randomly move the answers around. And I can also change a number of answers. So the default is 4, but you can go, have as many answers as you need. If I only need 3, I can just remove one. So let's just add some answers here. And I'm going to say I only have 3 answers, and I'm going to remove the 4th. So here, it's told me that I now have 3 answers. Once again, I have feedback for correct responses and incorrect responses. And if I go down, I can click on submit. Let's say let's look at the question settings, because this might help with some time-saving aspects of creating assessments. If I want to provide feedback for individual answers, so on the multiple choice question, I could only give feedback the way it was set up by default to the whole question. I couldn't give individual feedback for individual answers. So if I wanted to say, if you answered A, this would be your feedback. If you answered B, this would be your feedback. C, this would be your feedback. So that's a nice feature to add additional information for students if you have multiple choice questions. And you can also add media or web links to individual feedback or answers, and here is where you would select that. By default, 10 points are given to questions, so if you know all of your questions are going to be worth less points, you can define that here. And then, there's some other settings that might be useful for you. So that's one thing to look at. And that's always going to be over in the left right-hand corner there under settings. So these 2 questions are auto-graded, and I have indicated the correct answer. Other types of questions like essay, and some of the more complicated questions are going to require that you go in and assign points and give feedback. So I'm just going to leave it at these 2 questions, though. One thing I did want to say, as you can see, that creating the questions can be a little tedious, and you're going to be tempted to copy and paste from Microsoft Word. And I would just like to warn you that that is never a really good idea in Blackboard, because when you copy and paste from Word, you get hidden code from Blackboard that makes formatting a real issue. So I copied and pasted from Microsoft Word this question. So I copied the question, and then I hand entered the first answer, and then I copied and pasted the second and third option. And you can see it's kind of a formatting mess. So if you are going to copy and paste from a document, then you may copy and paste from a text document, something like Notepad or TextEdit, and that will remove all of that crazy Microsoft formatting and make your life a lot easier. So just a bit of hints and tricks, as we have many times tried to save time, but sometimes it has the opposite effect. When we started talking about quizzes, I mentioned a test generator. And if you have a lot of questions, I highly recommend using a text generator to help you create that file. And I have listed on the iTeachU site a link to using a test generator, and this is the one that I use most often, and it seems to be pretty stable, and it provides all of the question types that you might need. One thing it has, this specific test generator has you do is create your format in a certain way, but it provides all the help you might need. So if I want to create a multiple choice question, the code is to add MC before I list out my my questions. And if I click on a sample, then I can get an idea of what that formatting needs to look at. I can add a true and false, another sample, and an essay, and another sample. So if I follow that same formatting in a text document, I can copy and paste that document into this test generator and get a file that I can then upload into Blackboard, and it's going to save me a lot of time. So I have a text document that I wanted to share, and let me just share this with you. And let me make that bigger so you can see what it looks like. And it's not getting any bigger. So let's do it this way. There we go. So I have already pre-formatted this document. I have my multiple choice, I have my question, and then the answers. And the asterisk is that designating the correct answer. So I have a series of these questions, and then I have some true and false questions here also. And this one is a fill in the blank. And the format for that is, after the question, you add all of the possible options for fill in the blank. So I picked, I thought there was probably 2 different options that would be correct, the spelling and then a spelling with a period. It does not have to be case sensitive. So if someone types in Mosul with a lowercase m, it will still see is that correct. So I've already pre-formatted this, and I'm going to copy, and I am going to clear this out. And I'm just going to call it test. And I'm going to paste that in here. So now I can see that I have my content placed in there. And I'm going to click on Create Quiz, and oh, it's going to tell me that I have an error. So I need to fix that error. And I know exactly what the error is, because this right here is actually an essay question, and I forgot to put in the code for an essay, which is ES. So I'm going to just do that again. And now it's giving me a dialog box so that I can save my test, so that I can upload that into Blackboard. So going back to Blackboard, this is where I'm going to upload the questions. So I am going to click on Upload, and I am going to browse for that file, and I'm going to change the default points to 5 and click on Submit. So now I can see I have 9 questions totaling 50 points, and if I scroll down, I can see that I have multiple choice, I have an essay, which is something I'm going to have to grade as the teacher, and then I have some true and false questions, and then I have a fill in the blank. So instead of typing all of those individual questions in, I took a few minutes to format my document and uploaded them rather quickly. So that is why we always really suggest you use a quiz generator. Do you agree, Tina? Yeah, exactly. So that is the basics of creating a test. And now we're going to look at creating pools of questions so that you can create some, so you can pull random blocks of questions and create different tests for different students, or different tests for the same instance of a test, so that students are getting different questions. So we're going to do that next. I'm going to just go back to, I'm just going to go back to the iTeachU site, just so that you know where we're at. We're going to look at pools with the publisher's content. We're going to talk about creating multiple tests from the same pool of questions, and then creating pre-tests for self-study. So back in my Blackboard course, I'm going to go to the breadcrumb trail and go to pools. So I can get to this just by going back, or under course tools, I can also get there by going to tests, surveys, and pools. I'm going to click on pools. And I already have a couple chapters loaded here. So most often a textbook will provide a file that you can upload into Blackboard based on their textbook questions. So a lot of the publishers' resources that you get for a textbook will have already created questions that you can upload and use in your Blackboard course. They're going to be in a zipped file, and that is what you use to import into a pool. Those questions may be all multiple choice, they may be all true and false, they may be all one question type, or the publisher may have put a mix of questions for a chapter inside of one file. So there are a variety of ways that publishers do that. So it's just something to be aware of, that there might be multiple question types, or they might have chosen to put the same type of questions for each chapter in a separate file. So I am going to import a pool. And this is where you'll have had to download or collect the file from the publisher. And I have it right here. It's in a zipped file. So I'm going to click on Submit. And since it's a rather large file, it's going to take a minute to chug along. I'm going to say OK. And now I have 22 questions from this pool. I'm going to go ahead and click on Edit just so that we can see what the questions look like. So we have some multiple choice questions. And it looks like in this pool, that is the only question type that the publisher has provided. So that's what we're going to have to work with. So let's just take a look at some of these other files that I already uploaded. This one has 41 questions, so I'm hoping that there's different types of questions. So we got true and false, we got multiple choice, and I don't know if there's essays in this one, or it looks like just true and false and multiple choice. So once again, that's what we get to work with. If when I'm going through the questions, you're going to want to make sure that they are actually relevant to your course. So you can click and you can review them here. And if for some reason it's not a good question or you think it's not pertinent, you can delete them here. You can delete multiple questions at the same time. If you want to edit the question, you can edit them to make them more pertinent to your class. Just the same way that you would edit a question if you had entered it by yourself. And once again, you can add individual feedback for correct answers, incorrect answers, so that is always really helpful. Okay. So that is one way of adding questions into a pool based on that publisher content. I can also build a new pool. And if I have generated my own question using that test generator, this is how I could upload those questions using the test generator questions that I created before, but actually have them come into a pool. I'm going to say submit. So these are the questions that I had pre-formatted and used the test generator on. And so now I have these questions available in a question pool, which actually gives me more options when I'm creating assessments for students, because now I can pull from this pool as well as other pools. So so that's one of the beauty of pools. So this is how you create pools of questions of which you can then create a test that that pulls random blocks or individual question from these pools. So let me show you how now I would actually create that test based on the pool questions. So I am going to create a new test. And I'm going to skip the description and instructions, but of course you will never do that. You will always add all that information so your students know what's going on. Okay, so here we go. So I could create my own question. So if I knew I was going to ask one question for everyone and I wanted everyone to answer that question, I could add individual questions. I could also upload those questions from the test generator if I knew I wanted every student to take that or to answer specific questions. And I can also pull from that pool of questions. So let's say I want to pull a random block of questions. And I want to pull it from chapter 1. And I'm going to say all questions. So there's 22 multiple choice questions. And I'm going to click on submit. So now what this is telling me is that there's 22 questions from the chapter 1 pool, and I want to have the test pull 5 questions at random from that pool. So now every time a student takes this test, they're going to get a random 5 questions from that one pool. So if the students are taking the test at the same time, each student will get individual questions. Or if the student takes the test multiple times, then they will get a mix of questions every time. So that is pulling a random block. So I can also create a question set, which has a little bit more power because it lets me pull from all of my pools, all of my tests, as well as I can pull specific question types. So instead of just pulling from one pool a random block of all questions, I can actually say, I want to pull from the chapter 3, but I only want the multiple choice questions. I don't want the true and false questions. And I also, what happened to it? And I also can select specific questions. I'm going to go ahead and select them all though. So it's telling me I have selected 22 questions from Lang chapter 3 that are multiple choice. Or if I wanted to, I could say, I just want true and false questions. And if I select them all, then there's 40 of those questions. So creating a question set just is more powerful, and I have more options. I can pull from different pools. I can pull from individual tests, or I can pull just question types. So I could actually pull from multiple tests, and I could pull just all the true and false from multiple tests. So that's just a different way of selecting your questions. And I'm going to go ahead and pick 10 from there. And it gives, if I want to get more details, then this is going to actually show me the questions that I have selected. I'm going to go ahead and click on submit on that, just so we can see then how that looks. So if I need to go back and edit, I find the test and then I can go back and edit it. And there I have it. Okay. So we've created a quiz based on just adding individual questions, and we've also then created a test based on a pool of questions. So now let's go ahead and get them ready for a student. So now we're going to go ahead and activate the quizzes that we've created so that students can now take them. So as you can see on the test page here, you can see that many of the tests within this course have already been deployed. But you can also see that I have 2 tests, the sample 1 quiz, and then the test and pools that have not been implemented. They are not available for students yet. So let's go ahead and see how we might do that. I'm going to go into my course content area, and I have module 1 set up, and this is where I want to add the quizzes. I'm going to go up to assessments to test. And this is going to give me the opportunity to either create a new test, or it's going to select one of the tests that has not been deployed yet that I can add in to my course. So I'm going to click the sample quiz 1 sample and click on submit. So here I have my information. This is the description that was that I wrote into the test, and I can show that before they begin the test, or if I do not select it, then they won't see this information until they actually get into the test. And the same with the instructions. So if there's, for some reason, I want to keep some information hidden until they actually get into the test, I have that option. This is where I'm going to make my link available. And if I wanted to create an announcement letting students know that the test was available and ready, I could click on yes here, and it would automatically create an announcement for me. This is where I could select the different attempts. So right now it's set up for only 1 attempt. If I click on multiple attempts, I can either allow unlimited attempts or actually designate the number of attempts. So this is up to you. If you want to give students the opportunity to take a quiz with those random pools of questions over and over and over again, and you don't care how many times they take it, then set it to unlimited. If you'd rather have them only take it 3 times and perhaps average their score or take the lowest or their first attempt or last attempt, you know, those options are available to you. You can set a timer. You can also have the student blocked from the test after a certain amount of time when the timer ends, or you can just have the timer keep time of how long over they go. When you see the quiz on your end, you will be notified that they went over time and by how much. So if you'd rather have them just be completely booted out of the quiz or test, you have that option. Display after and display until dates are set up the same way as other course content within Blackboard. You can set up a password, so if you did want to password protect a quiz or a test, you have that option. One caution about using the display after option is that on that date, if you make that selection, that quiz or test will no longer be available for students to either take or to review. So if you want to give students the opportunity to be able to review the quiz so that they can prepare for a midterm or a final exam, you might want to just select a due date and then make the test, set the test up so that they can't start the test if the date is passed. So if you choose this option and a student is late in taking the test, they won't be able to. They'll get notified that the due date is gone. they won't be able to take the test. But it will also allow students who did take the test the opportunity to review. So that would be that's a big difference in how you set up your quiz. So that's something that you should really pay attention to. You can set up test availability exceptions. So if you have student with an accessibility statement, then you can set up more time or multiple attempts. If you want to give a group different due date, you can set that up there. And you can also, as I mentioned before, you can set up a quiz for self-assessment. So you could either choose to include the score in the grade center, or just have the student use that information for their own self-study and not factor into a final grade. You can also have different settings for how you give feedback to students. So if you, for instance, have a quiz and you are giving a time span for students to take the quiz, you might not want to give them the correct answers and the feedback in case they're going to talk to other students. You might want to just give the students their score, but then after the due date or on a specific date, you might want to reveal more of the correctness and the feedback. Just to kind of address the cheating issues. Once again, there's a lot of different options there. You might want to try them out before you actually implement them, so you can see how it looks on a student side. Of course, we always highly suggest you test something out before you implement it, or at least be willing to go back and check and see how it's working. And make sure it's working as you're expecting. Under the preparation, you have the option of all at once or prohibiting backtracking. So if you want students to have one shot at a question and then just keep going, you have that option. And then randomizing questions won't pull from a question pool like we set up in the sample quiz, but it will just put the same questions in a different order, depending on when a student takes it. So after making all those really complicated decisions, you can click on Submit, and your exam or quiz will be available for students. And it shows up like that. So we have set some testing options on that quiz. So how does it look in the Grade Center? So we have our test set up. So let's look and see how it looks in the Grade Center. I'm going to go ahead into my Grade Center. And as you create assessments, they are added to the back of the pack. So here is the Quiz 1 sample that I added just now. And I can go and get some column information. So I can see it's a 50-point test, and the category is test. The due date is today. And I have it included in the calculations. If any of that is not correct, then I can go up to edit column information, and I can change some of that information. If for some reason I gave it a really long name and it's not making sense to me, I can give it my own name, and this name is only seen on the teacher side. So just be aware that if you call it something different, then your students don't have the same view. And then I can adjust some of those settings. Here I can change the due date. And this is how I would show the grade column to the students, or include or not include the score in the final calculations. So that all looks good. there's other type of information that could be really handy. And all of that information is under the column options. Things like attempt stats. So if I click on that, oh, I'm on the wrong one. That's why. Let me try that again. This is where I wanted to be. Attempt stats. Okay. Why isn't that working? Might be confused. Okay, let's try something else. I'm just going to refresh here. Please be patient. Let's look at item analysis. Oh, okay. Let's look at this. Okay. So under the test statistics, I get only one student took this, so I'm not getting very good information, but if more students had taken this test, then I could get a pretty good idea of if my question was a good one or not. And that is under the test attempts. Other options, I can download all the results. So if I want to do further analysis of on my quiz, I can download them as a tab delimited file and then open them up in Google Sheets or Excel and do more evaluation on my questions. So if it's something that maybe I need for accreditation or as a reporting mechanism, if I'm using a standard test for an agency or discipline, I can export the results and manipulate them then in something a little bit stronger than the Blackboard options. I can look at item analysis, which kind of gives me a breakdown. I can view the grade history. So if students are not doing well, and I can look back and see where I might need to provide more resources. Lots of different options under the options for individual quizzes. So I just, take a look and see how that might help you, because there's just really a lot of information there. Going back to I Teach You, here is all of those options again, just to use as a reference. And to get to those, you click on the down arrow in the column header to get the column options. So the last thing we were going to talk about was mobile testing, and we're not going to get a chance to talk about that this time, but on the I Teach You site, there is a documentation for how to set up quizzes for mobile devices. So take a look, and if you have questions, you can get back to Tina or to me or anyone at eLearning to help with that. So once again, to get to this resource page, if you go to iteachu.uaf.edu, go to workshops and events, to the links and resources. The eLearning using Blackboard Assessment Functions information will be right there, and it has what we've gone over today. It'll have a copy of this recording and additional resources. That was a lot of information, but the good thing about it is this is recorded, so you can pause and rewind and review, and hopefully at a pace that helps you. And you can always contact UAF or eLearning, come to an open lab, come to a workshop, and we're really more than happy and happy to help you and to support you, because we wouldn't be here without you. So please take advantage of our resources, and if you have questions or suggestions or ideas, please contact us so that we can see what we can do. So thanks for joining, and thanks, Tina, for hanging out with me.